Welcome back to Double Down University, and finally, football is back. NFL football is back. So we have the Super Bowl champions, which is weird for me to say. As an Eagles fan, I really believe we should have won that Super Bowl, but that's not here nor there. So we have the Detroit Lions going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. And the 4 props I have for you guys, the first one is Jahmyr Gibbs, over 3.5 receptions. The next one is Harrison Buckner, over 8.5 fantasy. And Patrick Mahomes, over 17.5 rushing yards, as well as MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, over 39.5 receiving yards. Now, the first two are the ones I feel the most confident in. The next two are kind of just wild cards, things if you're interested in making a 5-man, or if you do 6-mans, you could throw 1 or 2 of those in there. But everything that I have pretty much correlates with game script. I think the Chiefs are like an 8 to 6 point favorite, so I'm expecting them to be up majority of the game and having Detroit to play from behind as well. So everything kind of correlates with that. You could also, one thing I've seen, but they don't really have too much of a big gauge on what he can do in this offense. But I think for Sam Laporta to only get 30 yards is ridiculous to me. Now, granted, he is a rookie and they may rotate another tight end in there. But their offense is pretty bare. Like I'll not kind of go to their depth chart because I'm gonna be talking about Gibbs shortly. But if you go to their offensive weapons, they don't have much. They have Josh Reynolds, he's okay. Marvin Jones, who's actually the oldest receiver in the league, which he played for Detroit. He went to Jacksonville for like 2 years, then he came back. But it's only because they have a really, really young wide receiving room, so they have to have a veteran in there to kind of teach guys how to be professional and things of that nature. So I don't think Jones will get too much targets. If anything, I think he will be one of the receivers out, other than St. Brown. So he will be the most guys to get the most touches. But then when you look at the tight ends, like you have Laporta, you have Brock Wright, you have James Mitchell. So most of these guys are pretty much like blocking tight ends, where you have them in like 12 personnel when you have 2 tight ends or whatever, and you try to block, and then you also have one that could go for play action and go out and run a route. So that's pretty much going to be Laporta. He's more of the route running type of tight end. So when you look at their weapons, he's probably could be potentially their second best option, other than St. Brown, to be able to get targets and get receptions and things of that nature, more than I would say a Josh Reynolds or a Marvin Jones, who probably be more of a decoy, just running down the field, kind of taking coverage with them, and then having something underneath open up. So I could definitely see Laporta getting those 30 yards, but like I said, that's a wild card as well, because you just never know how snaps are going to be divvied up. But anyway, so Harrison Buckner, the reason why I chose him is because everybody's like, oh, you could take Patrick Mahomes passing yards, or you could take his total touchdowns if he has, like, I think it was 3.5 or something. I don't know if they have it up there yet, but but to me, with the preseason and a lot of these starters not playing, also, guys, do not be scared to take unders in the first couple weeks, because it's going to take time for a lot of these receivers and quarterbacks to get on the same page. Like you have a Derek Carr and a Michael Thomas, who's been out for a while, have to get their chemistry and have to get that football shape back up to par. So you can see a lot of potential unders. Now, granted, like the QBs and like the bell cow running backs, like the Derrick Henrys, things of that nature, they're not going anywhere. They're not getting taken off the field. So there's a lot of under potential these next couple weeks. Don't just go all overs just because NFL is back and you just want to. I mean, granted, you want to see your favorite players or the players that you pick do well, but there's also potential for unders as well. But anyways, with Harrison Buckner, the reason why I chose him, because all we really going to do is just sit back and watch the Kansas City offense work, and all we really need is for Patrick Mahomes to get the Chiefs over the 50-yard mark every drive, or over 50% of the drives that he does, captain and command his team to go past the 50-yard mark. And we just need a field goal or touchdown out of every drive that he goes across the 50-yard line. And if he manages to get just 2 40-yard field goals, which would be 8 points, and then you get an extra point attempt on a touchdown score, then he should be able to hit his fantasy as well. And he has really, really good range. If you go, let me see if I can scroll down. So he made a pretty good amount of 40-yard field goals. And then he also has 50-yard range too as well. one game against Jacksonville. Actually, last year in the divisional round, he made 250-plus yard field goal kicks. He made one against Buffalo, one against Arizona, and one against the Chargers. So he's fully capable of doing that. And then he also, like, look at these extra points, like, because they score touchdowns like crazy. So he's getting like 6, 5, 4, 4, 3, and then 2. And then it was one game against Tennessee, which is crazy, where they didn't score at all. But and then he also gets the field goals as well. So I just think this is a really, really solid play. We're just hoping for Kansas City to rack up points, and whether it's field goals or touchdowns. So I really, really like this prop for him. And then moving on to Mr. Jahmyr Gibbs. So he is kind of a unknown in the football NFL world. But if you watch college like I do, I'm a big college football fan. So I've watched him play his whole career. Now, granted, his first couple years he played at Georgia Tech, and if you guys are familiar with Georgia Tech, you know that they are a triple option type team. But going back and looking at his numbers, because I didn't really, from first look, I didn't really think like he would get a lot of receptions playing at Georgia Tech, but he's gotten pretty substantial amount of pretty solid targets. So he's been over this line, a couple of times, like maybe 4 times out of his career at Georgia Tech. As you can see, 4 receptions, 5 receptions, 4 receptions, and then 4 receptions. So, he's quietly going over that. But then at Alabama, he's kind of a little inconsistent with his catches because, it's Alabama. They have a bunch of options on the outside, so they don't really need him to be able to get a bunch of receptions when you got like NFL type talent out wide. So as you can see, he had 9 receptions against Texas, 4 receptions against Louisiana Monroe, 3 against Vanderbilt, 5 against Tennessee, 4 against Mississippi State, 8 against Louisiana State, my bad, so LSU. And then 2, so it's inconsistent, but he's capable of being that type of back to where you can put him in a slot and he can get a couple catches, or just coming out the backfield running a little, a little swing route to the sideline, or like a little flat route to the sideline to kind of make that cover 2 defender honest on if he's going to stay with the receiver, or he's going to stay in that cover 2 zone to be able to guard that sideline or that route. So I really, really like Jahmyr in this spot as well, and I think 3.5 is pretty low for him, based upon like if they're going to be trailing, more than likely they're going to try to get the ball in his hands, whether it's out the backfield, getting his little short routes and trying to get space and stretch the field out wide by getting him out in space. So I really, really like that as well, and I'm shocked that it hasn't been bumped up to like 4. Now, granted, they may not use him too much, but I think they'll use him enough to be able to, because he's really, like I said, their options are pretty bare, so they don't have too much to be able to threaten Kansas City. And then also a big note too is that Kansas City is going to be most likely without Chris Jones, who is a big anchor of their defense. He's a defensive tackle for them, who's an excellent player, and so that could also affect Goff as he has more time to be able to make his reads and have more time to throw. And then also they may have to send pressure as well. So if they send pressure and they have Gibbs run on like a little swing route, he can be able to get multiple chunks of yardages. So I really like that pick as well. And then moving on to Mr. Patrick Mahomes. So with Mahomes, I also seen the news of Travis Kelce, so I'm like, okay, if Travis Kelce is not 100%, or even if he's a go period, if he was 100% and he was able to overcome that injury, I just see Patrick like rolling out and trying to, because they're going to put pressure on him, they're going to try to blitz him, they're going to try to get him off his spot and not keep him, comfortable in the pocket, want to, switch up different looks for him. And as I was looking through, he averaged 21 yards rushing last year throughout the season. But also looking at Detroit, they give up the most rushing yards from QBs last year. As you can see, like they gave up 147 against Chicago, 132 against Chicago, but most of those was from Justin Fields, and then against who was it? Against the Eagles, they gave up 90 yards rushing. Most of that was Jalen Hurts. And then against Buffalo, most of those was against Josh Allen. But even if you take out that large sum of yards from Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen, they still average 71. Not 71, but 21 rushing yards they give up total combined. So that's 700 rushing yards between Fields, Hurts, and Allen, and they still managed to, if you take those out of the equation, they still managed to give up 21 rushing yards a game. And I just think that Patrick Mahomes will be able to exploit that. Now, granted, also another thing to take into account is that if the Chiefs are to win this game, how many kneel downs will they have, or will Detroit have the last possession where they try to force the ball down the field and try to score, where it eliminate Patrick from having the kneel downs to get those negative yardage added on to his runs if he does make a couple runs in the game. So that's why I said that one is a wild card. And then as well as MVS, reason I like him, his average depth of target is 13.9 yards, which is amazing. His team target percentage is 13.3, which is pretty good. He's probably the second best target as opposed to Kelsey on the team, as we all know. But he's just more consistent. I trust him more than I trust Sky Moore. Now, granted, Sky Moore may have a big role in the game. So with the Chiefs, it's kind of a wild card with all their receivers because you just never know who's Patrick is going to target. But it just seems like he trusts MVS more than any of the other receivers, and also he's the oldest receiver in the room. So if that makes any difference, is that I read an article that he's trying to groom the younger receivers, like the Kadarius Tonys of the world, the Sky Moores, that he's the older guy in the room, so he has to show them be a leader by example and show them how to do things, how to be professional and things of that nature. So I just think that if he's going to go about doing it that way, then what's best than catching a couple passes and getting 40 yards, to go over this 39.5 prop. So that's one thing that I really like with him as well. And then his catch percentage is scary, his drop rate is scary. He's not the greatest catcher in the world, but when he does catch the ball, all we need is two big plays, two big catches, where it's one for 30 plus or one for 20 yards, and then he gets another 20 yards in the second half or something like that. So really, if he can go two catches for 40 yards, that's amazing. If he can go one catch for 40 plus yards, that's amazing as well. But he has that potential to do that. So that's why he's another wild card of mine as well. But anyways, those are my four. I appreciate you guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll go over them one more time. I have Jahmyr Gibbs over 3.5 receptions. I have Harrison Buckner over 8.5, fantasy score, and Patrick Mahomes over 17.5 rushing yards, and MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, over 39.5 receiving yards. And also, as I noted, you can either add Marvin Jones or Sam Laporta over receiving yards. That could be another play, especially if they're going to be behind. They're going to need to throw the ball to somebody. I was kind of looking at either between the passing attempts or passing completions with Jared Goff. But also, one thing to note too with passing attempts is that they have to be able to move the chains and be able to avoid a bunch of 3 and outs, because if they have a bunch of 3 and outs, it's impossible for them to throw the ball. I think 36 times, I think it is. Yep, 36 times, and then you're getting that 0.5 on the end too, which could be deadly as well. So those are the ones that I like the most. Another one that I give you guys too that I was looking at, I was kind of eyeing. Actually, they just added Nick Bolton to the board, but they don't have him for tackles. But Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I really like him as well for his tackles. He is one of those in the box type safeties where he's going to roam around and play kind of like that third or fourth linebacker, depending on how they set up, whether they set up in a 3-4 or a 4-3 defense. He kind of is that roaming kind of safety where he can come down in the box and hit, or come down in the box and assist on a tackle or things of that nature, run to the outside. So I think 4.5 would have been a good number. 4.5 is pretty good, but I think he should be able to get that, especially if the game script plays out and Patrick Mahomes is on the field for a large majority of the time, so it gives him more opportunities. That's why you see just a bunch of Detroit players and not a bunch of Kansas City players, because they don't know the snap counts that the Kansas City players will get as opposed to Detroit. So he's also a target I would target as well if you're just looking for an extra pick for the game. I like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson over 4.5 tackles. So anyway, so please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys most likely tonight or tomorrow. I will be making a video for the full slate on Sunday, so be tuned to that. So appreciate you guys.